A cordial greeting. Today is Tuesday, September 23, 2025. This is meteorologist Ruben Garcia. In this video I will be giving an update on the recently designated Invest 94 and 93, which are associated with two strong tropical waves that are projected to become tropical storms during the next few days as they move west-northwest. And the forecast related to the future tropical storms, Humberto and Imelda, has become complicated due to the possibility that in the long term both systems may interact in the southwestern Atlantic, which makes the forecast quite complicated and leaves us with many scenarios, from some scenarios with a track more toward the west and others with a track passing toward the east of the United States. Therefore, it is important that from Bermuda, the east coast of the United States, and the Bahamas remain alert to the evolution of Invest 94 and also to the progress of Invest 93, which could possibly be a threat to the island of Bermuda. In addition, during the next 3 days, Invest 94 will bring heavy downpours and a high risk of flooding across the northern half of the Lesser Antilles, Puerto Rico, and the Dominican Republic, where flooding could occur. And before giving more details of the forecast of these two disturbances, I wanted to comment that Hurricane Gabrielle continues to be a Category 4 hurricane, and it is forecast to cross over the Azores as a Category 1 hurricane, and because of this, a hurricane watch has been issued. Later in the long term, it is possible that it will move over parts of Portugal and Spain. And to give details of this forecast, I will be recording another video later today. Now then, let's zoom into the area where Invest 94 and Invest 93 are located. As we can see in the visible satellite animation, both disturbances remain disorganized, and this is mainly because dry air is interfering with the cyclonic organization of both tropical waves. However, the chances of development have continued to increase in recent days, and as you can see in the latest tropical outlook from the National Hurricane Center, they maintain a 60% chance of development for Invest 94 and have increased to 90% the chances of development for Invest 93. And a very significant change is that the area of possible development of Invest 94 has been adjusted farther west and south. In some scenarios, projections indicate that it could move quite far west and perhaps represent a threat to parts of eastern and northern Cuba, and in some cases even to parts of southeastern Florida and northern Bahamas. And also note that the area of possible development extends toward northern Haiti and the Dominican Republic, which is why we continue with a forecast in which it should not strengthen into a tropical depression before passing near or over Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. Now let's look at the projections of the specialized models, starting with the projection of Invest 93, which is the tropical wave that will pass far from the Caribbean, but which could eventually take a turn approaching the island of Bermuda in about 5 days. And according to the intensity projections, it is possible that it will already be a Category 1 or Category 2 hurricane when it approaches the area. Now, it is important to mention that its intensity and future track will largely depend on what happens with Invest 94, since both disturbances can have a rather complicated interaction in the southwestern Atlantic. Regarding the specialized projections for Invest 94, in general it is projected to move west-northwest, passing as a tropical wave over Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic, and it is not until it reaches parts of northern Haiti, Cuba, and the Bahamas where it could find favorable conditions to develop into a tropical depression. In fact, the intensity models keep the system as a tropical wave at least for the next 4 days, and it is not until Sunday or Monday when they manage to develop it into a tropical storm once it is already located over parts of the Bahamas or the Turks and Caicos Islands. And within this complex interaction that may happen with these two disturbances, there are different scenarios, which we can summarize in the projections of some model members. For example, the American model, most of the members develop both disturbances into tropical cyclones, but keep the circulation centers of both systems quite close, which creates an interaction northeast of the Bahamas. In this case, the American model suggests that both disturbances may move into the Atlantic waters to the north and represent a threat to the island of Bermuda. Meanwhile, under another scenario in which both disturbances do not interact significantly with each other, in that case Invest 94 could develop into a tropical storm or hurricane near northern Bahamas, while Invest 93 is also projected to strengthen into a tropical storm or hurricane as it approaches the island of Bermuda. Under this scenario, there is definitely greater risk for northern Bahamas and eventually for North Carolina or South Carolina. In fact, in my opinion, at the moment this is the most likely scenario. However, many changes may happen in the coming days, and, for example, the ensemble members of Google's artificial intelligence model have a much more westward track for Invest 94, and if this scenario occurs, which is less likely, it would represent a threat to Cuba, the Bahamas, and even to the state of Florida. Meanwhile, regarding Invest 93, the members of the Google AI model develop a fairly significant hurricane on a track near or over the island of Bermuda in about 6 to 7 days. Now let's look at the latest projections of the global models to see the different interactions that may occur between the two systems. Here we have the projection of the American model. Notice that in this case the model projects that a tropical depression could form this weekend associated with Invest 93, and by early next week, basically that circulation absorbs the circulation of Invest 94 and results in a single cyclone approaching Bermuda early next week. Meanwhile, on the other hand, we also have the projection of the European model. In this case, it keeps both systems at a greater distance, which allows both to develop into tropical cyclones, Invest 94 developing into a tropical depression or tropical storm near northern Bahamas, while Invest 93 strengthens into a major hurricane as it approaches Bermuda between Monday and Tuesday of next week. It also has 94 strengthening into a hurricane and also threatening Bermuda. So definitely two very different scenarios between the American model and the European model. In the case of the German model, it has a very similar projection to the European model. It develops both disturbances, that is, Tropical Storm Humberto and Tropical Storm Imelda, and in fact, in the latest run, it has two hurricanes developing by early next week with tracks very near or over the island of Bermuda. And the UK model also develops both systems, Invest 94 developing as a tropical storm over northern Bahamas and Invest 93 strengthening into a strong tropical storm or hurricane approaching Bermuda between Monday and Tuesday of next week. So overall you can see that there is a lot of uncertainty about what could be the future track and intensity of both disturbances. We will have to see how they interact over the weekend, and at the moment we do not know exactly what the risk could be for the Bahamas, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and for the island of Bermuda. At least in the short term, it should bring plenty of rain to the northeastern Caribbean. For example, according to the latest projections of the European model, during the next 72 hours between 2 to 5 inches of rain may accumulate, particularly for Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, while the American model is much more aggressive and in this case shows rainfall totals over Puerto Rico that could exceed 7 inches in some areas. So much caution with the potential for flooding from tomorrow Wednesday morning until Thursday night. In addition, the San Juan National Weather Service Office warns of the possibility of some wind gusts up to 35 miles per hour that could affect the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico during the next 3 days, particularly in coastal and mountain areas. Already in the long term, depending on what happens with Invest 94, there is the possibility of heavy rain affecting parts of the Turks and Caicos Islands and the Bahamas. In some cases, as the European model shows us, more than 300 millimeters could accumulate over the next 7 days. For the Dominican Republic, it should also rain quite a lot, although for the moment rainfall projections remain between 75 to 100 millimeters, but it is important that you remain alert to any deviation farther south of Invest 94 that could bring more rain to the region. Well, that's all for this forecast update. I will continue closely monitoring the situation with both disturbances and if necessary I will record another video tomorrow morning to update this forecast. And before I go I wanted to ask you to like this video. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the bell so you receive notifications when I record new videos. I hope everyone has an excellent afternoon. See you later.